A significant pattern change is developing across the United Kingdom. And if you've been experiencing the mild, damp conditions we've had this past fortnight, you need to understand why that's all about to end. Right now, conditions across the country vary considerably. The southwest from Cornwall through Devon and into Somerset has been dealing with mild, wet weather, temperatures running well above the seasonal average. Western Wales has seen particularly heavy rainfall. Some areas reported flooding this morning. That Atlantic influence has been dominant. Compare that to the Scottish Highlands. Temperatures have already dropped to -5 in parts. Bitterly cold with a sharp easterly wind developing. That the Arctic air we're going to be discussing. The Midlands has experienced rather dull conditions. Temperatures hovering around 6 or 7 degrees. Grey skies. Nothing particularly exciting for those interested in winter weather. That extended mild spell ends this weekend. Now, let me explain what's happening meteorologically. We have an area of high pressure building over Scandinavia. Areas of low pressure are attempting to push in from the Atlantic. But here's the critical point. These Atlantic systems are beginning to slide southwards rather than tracking west to east as they normally would. That's unusual. That change in track is forcing the wind direction to shift from westerly to easterly across the country. The trigger is a low pressure system sliding southwards on the 20th and 21st of January. As it does so, heights build towards Scandinavia. The lows begin tracking northwest to southeast. That sets up the easterly flow. I've examined the latest model output from the Met Office, ECMWF, and GFS. There has been considerable agreement developing over the past 48 hours. Earlier in the week, models were showing different solutions. Some kept the mild Atlantic pattern going, others showed cold developing. That uncertainty has diminished. We're now seeing around 90% of ensemble members showing well below average temperatures through the weekend into next week. Let me take you through the timeline. Today, Tuesday the 20th, we have a wind warning in force for parts of West Wales and southwestern England. Gusts up to 65 miles per hour are possible. Some areas are still recovering from Storm Goretti. Eastern areas will see the better conditions. Some sunny spells this afternoon. Temperatures around 8 or 9 degrees quite widely. Wednesday brings focus back to rainfall. Outbreaks of rain will continue to move up from the south through the day. There will be some drier slots in between, but most of us can expect wet weather on Wednesday. It's particularly across eastern Scotland where rainfall totals will build up. We could see some snow as well above 300 or 400 metres by Wednesday afternoon. There is a rain warning in force for these areas from midday Wednesday until midday Friday. That's a 48-hour warning. With southeasterly winds bringing the added risk of large waves and an unusual direction for the rainfall to come in, we're expecting some disruption. By the end of Friday, we could see as much as 120 millimetres of rain building up over the highest ground in eastern Scotland. With the added risk of snow mixed in, that significant accumulation. Thursday and Friday, those low-pressure systems continue to slide southwards. They could bring some quite stormy conditions around Thursday into Friday, particularly for the south and southwest. But the key development is what happens behind them. Saturday through Sunday, the transition begins for northern areas. The wind backs into an easterly direction. Cold air starts to filter in from the North Sea and from Scandinavia. Scotland and northern England see the change first. Further south and west, probably into early next week before you feel the full effects. By Sunday, all areas are looking quite cold. We can expect wintry showers in from the east. Now, it's not quite beast from the east levels. Let me be clear about that. Many of you remember February 2018. We saw the -17 or -18 degree isotherm move through. Temperatures dropped to -15 in parts of Scotland. That was extreme cold. This event is looking more like -5 to -10 at 850 millibars. That cold, if not very cold, depending on how close we get to -10, it proper winter weather. But it is not quite the extreme we saw in 2018 or even what we experienced back in January of this year when we got down to about -11 or -12. The upper air charts show cold air becoming entrenched across the country from around the 25th onwards. There's cold air trapped within high pressure to our north and northeast. Areas of low pressure will attempt to push in from the south and southwest. When they meet that cold air, they weaken. That when we could see snow, the snow risk is highest where these mild systems from the Atlantic bump into the cold air mass, northern edge of those systems. So central southern England, the Midlands, parts of Wales could see snow from these features. The exact track of each system will determine who sees what. Move it 50 miles north and you get rain. Move it 50 miles south and you stay dry and cold. Eastern and southeastern coasts will see plenty of wintry showers packing in with that easterly wind. Where the wind is strong enough, these could drift as far west as Manchester. Northern Scotland will likely see heavy wintry showers as well. The east of England from Yorkshire down through East Anglia to Kent will be particularly exposed to these showers. Now, some of the model output shows what meteorologists call channel lows. These are areas of low pressure that get squeezed between the cold air to the north and milder air to the south. They track along the English Channel. When they occur, they can bring significant snow to areas south of the M4 corridor. Parts of southern England that don't normally see much snow. That's one scenario being shown. It is not guaranteed, but it is possible from around the 27th or 28th onwards. The confidence level on this forecast, ID put it at about 90% that we turn cold. The timing for northern areas, Saturday through Monday, that is fairly solid. For southern areas, early next week, still some uncertainty on exact timing. The intensity of the cold, probably 70 to 80% confidence we see -5 to -10 at upper levels. Snow amounts and locations, that is much lower confidence, perhaps 50%. Snow is notoriously difficult to forecast more than 2 or 3 days out. The models are in strong agreement on the pattern change. Where they differ is on the details. How far south does the coldest air penetrate? How active are those southern systems? Do they bring rain or snow? That is what we'll be watching over the coming days. Let me address something you might be thinking. Yes, we've seen this pattern fail before. We've had forecasts showing cold that didn't materialize. Storm Betty a couple of weeks back brought that cold line further north than expected. Some areas saw heavy snow, but many saw rain instead. Could that happen again? Possibly. But the signals are stronger this time. The block over Scandinavia is more robust. The easterly flow is better established. Looking at practical preparations. If you are in Scotland or Northern England, you'll feel the change this weekend. Make sure you've got antifreeze topped up. Check your heating is working properly. If you need to travel Sunday or Monday, allow extra time. For the Midlands and Southern England, early next week is when you will notice the shift. If you don't normally keep a snow shovel or ice scraper, now would be a good time to locate them. Those in East Anglia who've been waiting for proper winter weather, this pattern has potential. But I am not making promises until we see how these systems develop. Wales, you are dealing with heavy rain through midweek. By the weekend, that changes, temperatures will drop. Rain could turn to sleet and then snow, particularly over higher ground in Snowdonia and the Brecon Beacons. For elderly relatives or vulnerable neighbours, check in on them. When we get these rapid temperature drops from mild to cold, people can be caught out. Make sure they've got adequate heating. Make sure they've got food in if the weather does turn nasty. If you are on higher ground anywhere in the country, be prepared for snow. Pennines, Scottish Highlands, Welsh Mountains, Dartmoor, even the North Downs could see some. It won't just be the usual suspects this time. The other consideration is health. We've had temperature swings over the past few weeks. One day 12 degrees, next day 3, then back up again. People have been poorly. Sinus trouble, headaches, persistent coughs. That back and forth pattern ends when sustained cold moves in. Some people find that easier to deal with than the constant fluctuation. Roads in the south want to be gritted as thoroughly as they are further north. That is just the reality. Local authorities in Kent or Sussex don't have the same equipment as those in Yorkshire or Scotland because they don't normally need it. So if you in the south and you see snow forecast, work from home if you can. Don't attempt that commute if conditions deteriorate. The interest period runs from around the 25th of January through to at least the end of the month, possibly into the first few days of February. The pattern could persist that long, or it could break down sooner if Atlantic systems manage to push back in. We'll know more in 3 or 4 days. Some runs are showing a sudden stratospheric warming event developing. If that comes off, it could reinforce the cold pattern into mid to late February, put the UK in the freezer, as they say. But that S longer range. Too early to have confidence in that. What we can say with reasonable certainty. This week stays unsettled, wet and windy for many. By the weekend, a marked change. Easterly winds bring cold air. Next week, well below average temperatures. Increased risk of snow, particularly from weather systems moving in from the south, meeting that cold air. Could we see significant snow? Yes. Will everyone see it? No. It depends on your location and the exact track of those systems. I'll be monitoring the models closely over the next few days. The Met Office will likely start issuing cold weather warnings as we move into that 7-day time frame. When the UK Met Office model starts showing this pattern, you know they're retaking it seriously. And that run today does show those lows clearing to the south, easterly winds pushing in by Sunday and Monday. This isn't sensationalism. It's not the apocalypse. It is winter. Cold air from Scandinavia, easterly winds, potential for snow. We've seen it before. Many of you lived through worse. The Great Storm of 87, Burns Day Storm in 90, Beast from the East in 2018. You know how to handle winter weather, but it does deserve attention, particularly for those in areas that don't see this sort of weather regularly. Southern England, you might want to pay closer attention to forecasts over the next week. This pattern could bring you conditions you are not accustomed to. The precipitation spikes on the ensemble charts are interesting. Normally, when we get these cold air masses from the east, it's generally quite dry. Not this time. Multiple systems are forecast to interact with that cold air. That S, what creates the snow potential. Channel lows, weather fronts from the southwest, convective showers off the North Sea. Multiple mechanisms for precipitation. One final thought. The jet stream is tracking down into Spain. That S why these lows are being pushed southwards. It is an unusual configuration. When you get that set up, you get unusual weather. The jet stream position is the key to this whole pattern. So, wet and unsettled this week. Pattern change this weekend. Cold next week with snow risk. Details still to be determined. But the broad picture is becoming clear. Stay tuned to the forecast. Check back in a couple of days when we'll have better clarity on snow amounts in specific locations. The Met Office will be your official source for warnings. I will be providing updates as the models come in. And remember, even if we don't see the most extreme version of this cold spell, we are still looking at a significant change from what we've had. If you've been complaining about the dull, grey, mild weather, well, you're about to get something different. That's the situation as it stands. Cold air is coming. The only questions remaining are how cold, for how long, and who's